So this is so crazy again. This time, yes, I'm wearing something other than a sweatshirt. I'm wearing a t-shirt. Um, so I do change my clothes. So if anybody does watch this video, I want to thank you for this. Just I don't know, just wanted to talk about or wanted to share my thoughts on nonverbal learning disability. But for anybody who's watched my videos, of course, you know that I do have a nonverbal learning disability, and it is something that does not go away. It's not a curse or anything, but it's something that you have all your life, doesn't go away. I don't know if it gets any worse or better. You learn to cope with it, but it is something that is always there. And my thoughts on this, and is something I've noticed about myself, is that well, there's one part of the nonverbal learning disability there. You have a thought and it just wants to go. But one of the things that I've dealt with for a lot of my life is the challenge in planning things and the challenge of doing things correctly the first time so that you don't have to go back and do it again. And the challenge of pre-planning things, in other words, thinking ahead, looking at your work week and scheduling it out, and then basically planning for the things that you need to do and taking into account the things that can happen to prevent you from doing them, especially from doing them the way that you need to do them. I would call them contingencies, or I don't know, stuff happens. I'll give you an example. It's like if you're planning on going to a doctor's appointment and you know it takes an hour to get there on a day with no traffic, which is a joke compared, for most of us, for where we live, because even out here, like I live in the countryside and we don't get traffic. We don't really get much traffic out here in the mountains. What we get is a ton of drivers who drive 10 to 15 miles an hour below the speed limit, and they hold you hostage for 15 miles because there's only a limited amount of places to pass. And sure thing, when it comes time to pass someone, for, miles and miles before you reach that passing zone, there's nobody coming the other way. As soon as you reach that passing zone, 2 or 3 people show up. And the guy or lady in front of you just continues to hold you hostage. So what now should have taken you an hour takes an hour and 15 minutes. Well, for a neurotypical individual, they might just factor that 15 minutes into their drive. But for somebody with a nonverbal learning disability, even though we've done the drive 100 different times, we may forget to factor that in. And that same challenge can bleed into pre-planning for work, for social events, for a whole host of different things. So one of the things that I guess by force of habit or just by necessity, is that I'm having to do now for my job and for other things as well, is learning to think, what if? Quite literally, for my job, I have a list of contingencies, a list of things that can happen to basically screw my day up. My computer can crash. I can get an email to do something that I didn't think about. If I'm driving somewhere, PennDOT can just show up and work on the road, which they do. I could get stuck behind a tractor trailer. Easy, 15, 20 minutes added to my drive right there. These little things that show up. And I've got to train myself to think ahead. And one of the ways I do it is I just obsess over it. I obsessively think, okay, well, what can go wrong? What can happen to make sure that my planned hour drive turns into an hour and a half drive? Now, what numbskull is going to show up and do 15 miles an hour below the speed limit and hold me hostage for 20 minutes? What big rig am I going to get behind? Or when is PennDOT just going to show up and, willy-nilly decide to, oh, I'm going to fix the road today. And you're stuck in a traffic jam for 15 minutes while they flip the sign or do what they have to do. So I have run into that at work as well, because my work involves a lot of travel, because I work at nursing facilities. I don't work for nursing facilities. I work at a nursing facility. Time and again, I've gone out to a nursing facility 2 or 3 or 4 times that takes me an hour and a half to get there one way, when I could have gone there at least once or twice. Why? Challenges with disorganization, challenges with time management, challenges with forethought. So one of the most important things that I've noticed that I have started to do and started to work with me is communicating to your employer, the people involved with you, that you have a nonverbal learning disability, and being open to suggestions about how to manage your time. Because time management, to me, to somebody who is neurotypical, I especially see this with a lot of moms. A lot of moms are great at managing their time because they have to. They've got multiple priorities: work, kids, and things that come up, running kids from here to there. They're great at managing their time. Most of the women I work with are moms, and they're fantastic at managing their time. And I don't know where I was going with that. See? NLVD. Thought just went. But one of the things that have learned to do is to write lists. I quite literally have this whiteboard sitting by my desk, and it has things that say, this is what you need to do before you go out to a facility. So these are the ducks that you need to do to get in a row. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, then you need to do that. And I found out by having those lists, it reminds me of what I need to do. Now, that may seem as common sense to most people, because even people without nonverbal learning disabilities make lists. To me, with a learning disability, though, nonverbal learning disability, it seems like an epiphany, like, oh my gosh, I can list these things out. Because with a nonverbal learning disability, your mind is constantly stimulated by external stimuli. That's where it can closely mimic autism. Your mind's constantly stimulated by things that are going on outside of your being. And it's bad, even with online, having the internet and YouTube and things like that, or getting push notifications. It's bad. You get so many things that just constantly vie for your attention like that, and it's so easy to get distracted. When you have a nonverbal learning disorder, distraction comes naturally. And in terms of time management, that means setting out to do a project, then, oh, this comes up, or you think of this, then you got to do this, then you got to do it before. And before you know it, instead of doing just one thing, you're doing 15 different things, and you complete about 2 of them, and you have about 13 things left uncompleted that you swear you're going to get back to, but then you get involved in something else, and then you forget. And you get behind in a project, and all of a sudden what you intended to do, the job that you intended to do, which you had put a lot of thought into and realized you needed to do, all of a sudden doesn't get done. And then you're backed up, and then you're put behind, and then that creates anxiety, and the whole thing just spirals. So I like to have a visual, just a marker, And I know that some people love Excel spreadsheets. I personally hate Excel. I mean, I use it extensively at work because we have to, but I can't stand Excel. You talk about a way of jumbling a bunch of crap into the smallest space possible and then trying to organize it. Not a fan of Excel or any spreadsheet for that matter, but I'm slowly learning to make it work. And one of the things you can do is you can use a board, or if you use Excel, you can use different colors or bold and highlight, colorize things till your heart's content, so things will stand out. If I have a board, I have a board to my left here. You really can't see it, but it's there. It's hanging on the wall, and it has different things in different colors to make things stand out, and things to say before I do this or before I do that. This and this needs to get done. And when my mind is going at 100 miles an hour, which it does sometimes with a nonverbal learning disability, this is sort of an anchor. It's sort of a grounding effect. It's a head clarity. It just takes everything that was in here and just levels it out and makes it more clear. You might call it centering. I call it clarity. Centering and clarity are very similar to each other. So it helps to write things down. And I think to a limited degree, it helps to talk things out to people. Depending on your personality, I consistent with many people with nonverbal learning disability, I happen to be very good with words in conversation. I happen to I guess, naturally use a lot of what's called verbal judo. And I found that I have a way of smoothing things over when people are upset, most times. Or I have a way of, I've been told I can be eloquent in my verbal presentation. Now, I would argue that point, but I am always the last to give or accept praise for myself. That is a no-go. No praise, no nothing. So, but I do find out that talking a problem through to somebody else, or even putting it in a video, can be very helpful because it's another way for me to clear my mind. But I would like some help. So what do you do to clear your mind? If you have a nonverbal learning disability, what do you do when your mind is running, or even if you get that brain fog? I stare at a computer screen for a majority of the day, and within half an hour of doing that, my brain, especially up here, I get brain fog, and my focus and thought clarity just goes. And wondering if anybody would be able to offer any advice. So, well, that's my short little stint for tonight. Hope everyone has a good night. Thank you and goodbye.